Okay, Euro, we're going to go through the Enlightenment thinkers, but first I want to catch up on two that I actually left out. The first one is Rene Descartes, however you say his name. So Descartes, what you need to know about him, he wrote a book called Discourse on Method. Remember that through the D. Discourse on Method, Descartes, and Deductive Reasoning, okay? That is the opposite of inductive reasoning that we've been talking about in class. And if you need help with that one, there's all kinds of videos on YouTube that you can quickly look it up, okay? Remember Descartes' famous quote is, "I think, therefore I am." The other guy that's the opposite of him, or well, kind of opposite, is Bacon, because Bacon believes in inductive reasoning, okay? A scientific method kind of thing. Now, for the Enlightenment, we're going to go through these rather quickly. So here we go. The first guy that you need to know is Voltaire. Remember Voltaire with a V. It's like separating church and state, because that's what Voltaire is all about. It's about the separation of church and state. Say that on the AP test. His most famous book is called The Candid. And that's where he criticized the flaws of society. It was consequently imprisoned for doing that. So the candid is wherever he comes up and he's criticizing the government. Another person that you need to know is Montesquieu. Montesquieu wrote Spirit of the Laws, and that's about a separation of powers, legislative, judicial, executive branches. That's where all of that is coming from. Another guy that you need to know is Rousseau. Rousseau made the social contract. Remember Rousseau, social contract, okay? And there's going to be a paper in class, if you're in my classes, that I'll give you that separate all the different people. But to keep going on and getting through this video rather quickly, the next person is Thomas Hobbes. Remember Thomas Hobbes, he actually wrote a book called The Leviathan, which is like the giant sea monster that we discussed. Okay, so in The Leviathan, he basically says that people by nature are nasty, brutish, and short. And because that's their human nature, then we need to have a government that can get a hold of these people and to make sure that they're following the rules in society. So he believes in monarchies. If you flip this over and look at the opposite version of this, you might think about John Locke. John Locke says people aren't naturally nasty, brutish, and short. No, they're tabula rasa. In other words, they're blank slates, and their minds are shaped by the things that actually happen. He wrote a book called The Two Treatises of Government, which is also on that sheet that you guys can be familiar with later. And that right there, guys, is getting pretty close to the end. You may also want to know Diderot. He is the guy that wrote the encyclopedia. And he was also going to be connected in the next video with Catherine the Great, who was considered by some to be an enlightened despot. I think that I've hit the major ones, but all of this stuff, guys, you could list 1,000 different Enlightenment thinkers or philosophers. I guess if we're going to throw a woman into the game, Madame, I'm not sure if I'm going to say this correctly, Joffrin is famous for creating the most celebrated salons in France. Remember, in France, there was salons, and in England, there was coffee houses. Salons were by invitation only, but they could include women. Coffee houses were in England, and even though they were mostly men who were attending these things, it would only cost a penny to get inside of these coffee houses. And so some people called them penny universities. But anyways, back to the salon. Madame Joffrin had the most famous ones, and there was all kinds of famous people that you may remember that showed up to visit the salons, such as Thomas Jefferson and Diderot and Adam Smith all came to her establishment. Another woman you want to know for this is Mary Wollstonecraft. Mary Wollstonecraft read this book by Edmund Burke. Remember, Edmund Burke is that huge conservative you want to use in contextualization if you talk about that. So Edmund Burke, he wrote a book called A Vindication of the Rights of Man, which basically said that that men were in a better position than women and all this kind of stuff. Well, anyways, Mary Wollstonecraft comes out and says, no, actually, women should be involved. She is a feminist, and she wrote A Vindication of the Rights of Women. She argued against sexism of Rousseau. Remember, Rousseau thought that there should be like a cult of domesticity or two different spheres for men and women. And just a little fun fact, she is also the daughter of Mary Shelley, who is the author of Frankenstein. So really quick, that was the IDs. Go through this again and look over them. But more importantly, look at the chart and the notes to make sure that we got this down. See you later.